Hi guys, we're going to go over an optimal recruitment workflow for graduate and apprenticeship hiring. This is just going to be a guide. You may want to run with a couple of different things, but hopefully it gives you a good overview of what's possible with the right recruitment system and workflow in place. First, I just want to address the fact that this only has one interview step in the process. We think that that is enough. It's more likely going to be an assessment center for this type of hiring, but there's only going to be one instance where you meet with the candidates before making a decision. Now, I will highlight, as I have in a number of these videos, that this piece here, the online assessment piece, is doing quite a lot of heavy lifting. If you get this right, then hopefully everyone that comes through to the assessment center or interview has the capability, has the desired attributes that you require in order to thrive within the apprenticeship or graduate program. So let's start at the beginning. I'm just going to pinch in a little bit here so we can see what's going on in terms of the initial part of the process. I think the most important thing here is to, before you start the recruitment drive, to agree the hiring criteria that you'll be looking for in candidates. Now, often when it comes to recruitment, these criteria have been kind of inherited from previous programs. You might have certain competency models, etc. One thing that we are really, really passionate about is ensuring that that hiring criteria is agreed by the different stakeholders involved. That could be hiring managers, training and development, people team, and recruitment. The goal is to get everyone's consensus on what attributes should be assessed and what you should be looking for in new hires for the program. Those attributes are going to change from program to program. So we've developed these kind of ideal candidate profiles for many different graduate programs or apprenticeship programs, and the program, the level of the apprenticeship, the type of graduate program it is going to dictate what those attributes are fundamentally. Some of the programs are more technical, some of them are not technical, some of them are more behavioral in nature. And identifying what those key attributes are that enable people to thrive is really important. In order to do that, though, we would really recommend you start from this piece called a job analysis. There is a whole video on how to conduct job analysis. There's a whole video on how to get alignment with your stakeholders on that hiring criteria, and I urge you to watch that video. In short, in a quick summary, that job analysis starts by analyzing people on the program to find out what tasks they do, what attributes they think are required to complete those tasks effectively, and what they find challenging and rewarding about the program. What that then enables is a conversation with those stakeholders based in the reality of what people are doing. And that minimizes the amount of conjecture, opinion that could come into that conversation around what attributes to look for, and actually just look at the cold hard facts. So that's the first step of the process. If you get that wrong, everything that comes after this is going to be irrelevant. Ultimately, it's going to waste time because it's going to point you really effectively at the wrong candidates. So getting that hiring criteria agreed with those stakeholders so that everyone feels included, everyone feels heard about what to look for in new hires is really, really critical. The next piece is around advertising. Look for graduate apprenticeship roles. There's a great opportunity with careers fairs. There's great opportunity with social media, particularly. Well, I'm not going to go to the individual platforms, but we've seen some really effective campaigns run on social media to attract candidates. Job boards, obviously, you've got the careers job boards specifically that target graduates and apprentices. These are all valuable tools, and you're going to use a range of them. The goal really is to try and get diverse talent pools. So even though you might have a level of qualification required in terms of education, you want to ensure that you are reaching people that perhaps may not have heard of your organization, may not be aware that there are graduate and apprenticeship programs within your organization, and that can encourage a really rich and diverse group of candidates in your funnel. Where do you want to point those candidates to? We would recommend you use an ATS for graduate and apprenticeship hiring. Don't use the job boards platforms because it's going to be really difficult to manage, particularly when you're processing candidates and inviting them into things like assessment centers. Should you ask for a CV and resume? I think yes. That's not always our recommendation, but for this, I would probably say yes. Whether you use it in this initial application review for graduate programs, yes. Not necessarily for apprenticeship programs. So there is some flex here in this model, where, dependent on the level of the program. Should you ask for qualifications? Yes. And eligibility, absolutely. So you will get people applying for these programs that aren't eligible. Maybe they don't meet the required qualifications or criteria. Should you ask for a cover letter? It depends on the type of organization you are. My preference is no. I think there's so much bias and subjectivity that could come into reviewing an application form or a cover letter. So any of those kind of questions, why did you want to apply for this graduate program? To be honest, I wouldn't bother. I think it all comes down to what happens at the next step. The next step, typically, in this process, is you're going to review those applications. So you're going to review the resumes. Now, the main reason to do that is to ensure that everyone that's going into your funnel at that stage is eligible, meets your qualifications. Because what you're going to do then is invite them to complete an online assessment. Now, obviously, you don't want to be sending that assessment to people that aren't eligible. It's going to waste their time. The online assessment can do some heavy lifting for you in this regard. So it should really state early on in the process that, look, you must have these eligibility criteria for the program. If you don't meet these, please do not complete the online assessment. But we know just through experience that often graduate programs, the recruiters do like to review the resumes. This is an optional step. So if, for example, you don't want to review resumes, let's say you want to remove names completely, which is recommended, to be honest, in terms of ensuring a fair and consistent hiring process, then you can fast track candidates straight from the application form into an online assessment. What doesn't normally happen with graduate hiring is that that's automatic. So, of course, your assessment provider should integrate with your ATS, but normally you have a window of applications. And at the end of that window, in your communication with candidates, when they apply, say, great, thank you for applying. You will be sent an invitation. If you're eligible, you'll be sent an invitation for your online assessment on this date or by this date. So please look out for it. And at that point, you're going to batch send those assessments. And you can do that through your ATS if it's integrated, or you can do that through your assessment provider's platform. So they're all getting an assessment on the same day. That's typically the process for apprenticeship graduate hiring in terms of administering an online assessment. For other types of volume hiring, they're typically administered as soon as the candidate applies, because that candidate has a finite window in terms of other opportunities, and you want to get that candidate through to a decision stage as quickly as possible. With graduate and apprenticeship hiring, you have a fixed window where they're not going to take any other programs, presumably. They understand the timescales associated with the application process, and you can send the assessment invitation to everyone at the same time, and then obviously review the results again at the same time. Now, the online assessment piece is going to trigger an action. So if they score above a threshold, which you set, then you're going to progress them to assessment center or interview. If they don't score above that threshold, you're going to reject that candidate. Now, what that threshold should be is really dependent on how many candidates you want at assessment center, which is going to be dependent on how many candidates you're going to hire. Ultimately, it varies from company to company. Most companies work on a 3 or a 4-to-1 ratio. So if you're hiring 50 people, you're going to want 200 people at assessment center, or 150. And ultimately, you should know, if you've done some kind of work with your assessment provider, what that score roughly is going to be. And you can start moving people through, or you can wait for everyone to complete the assessment within a reasonable time frame, let's say a week from being sent it. And then you're going to trigger the top 200 or top 150 candidates are going to progress through to assessment center, and you're going to reject the rest of the candidates. Now, obviously, that assessment is doing a lot of heavy lifting for you. It's telling you which candidates to prioritize in the recruitment funnel. So it's really important it does a couple of things. So the online assessment should only assess job relevant attributes. This is really prevalent in graduate and apprenticeship hiring. From hiring managers, you get quite a lot of subjectivity in terms of the traits or behaviors that are required to succeed in the role. What you want to do is really strip it back to that original job analysis and say, okay, look, here are the tasks they're doing. Here are the attributes that are required to do those tasks well. Which ones of these do we want to be assessing? It should educate candidates on the program, particularly for graduate and apprenticeship level. Look, people haven't worked in this environment before. They don't know what to expect, really. They probably haven't read the job description that thoroughly, to be honest. You really want to take them through a digital year in a life or digital experience of the program. And the questions, the scenarios that they're going to encounter should be realistic to what happens in your organization. And it should enable candidates to deselect themselves if the job's not right for them. Then That assessment does the heavy lifting. You progress those candidates to interview or assessment center, and the assessment center should test the same attributes as the online assessment. So, what the assessment center is really for is to validate that the candidates do have the behavior skills knowledge that have been assessed already in the online assessment. And you're going to do that not necessarily by the same kind of questions or interview questions, but by interactive exercises. And that is going to show you, particularly if they're job relevant, they should always be job relevant. It's going to show you what they would be like in those scenarios, completing those tasks that you're going to ask them to do when they start. And you're going to score them, preferably keep that data, and you're going to progress the candidates that have scored the highest through to an offer stage, and you're going to give personal feedback to ones that didn't succeed because they have committed to come to an assessment center, and that's the very least you can do. So that's the optimal workflow that we see for both graduate and apprenticeship hiring. Obviously, your assessors, usually hiring managers, they can be HR, but the important thing is that it's structured, it is recorded and stored, and preferably keep that data because your assessment provider is going to enjoy looking at that data in relation to how it compares to their online assessment. So that's the graduate apprenticeship recruitment workflow. I hope it helps. There's loads more videos in the volume high volume recruitment playbook. Thanks so much for your time.